Good morning and welcome to all of you. Nothing is going to prevent me from coming to the 4th annual Work It. Not even partial knee replacement surgery 5 days ago. So I have to be here. This is a fabulous view of these incredibly creative and ambitious women. There are 600 people that registered for this conference from 30 states and 13 countries. About a quarter of you are self-employed and about 13% are students. And there's an even split of you working for for-profits and not-for-profits. So it's a fabulous kind of snapshot of the podcast world. And we're actually really excited to be back in New York after being in LA last year and hope to be back in LA next year. I want to begin by thanking our incredibly generous funders, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, and our sponsors, Spotify, Capterra, Stitcher, Art19, Himalaya, Pandora, and the Yale School of Management and its women's leadership programs. And let's give a special shout out now to the women of WNYC Studios. Yes! They have spent so much time and energy planning Work It, and they own it with great passion. I am not going to be able to name all of them, but Jennifer Sendro, yeah, and Denise Bennett, and Jules Dodson, Shannon Connolly. Thank you so much. And we also actually have 2 dudes. We've got Ricardo Fernandez, yay Ricardo, and David McLean helping us out as well. We hope that you find during these 2 days something in this conference that actually transforms the way you think, the way you see your work, your world, your dreams, whether you're a mentor or whether you're a newbie. And you'll be able to hear some of the sessions actually on a special series of podcasts, which we're going to release later this year. So you'll be able to listen to your favorite sessions and also share them. Please share them with people who weren't able to be here. So speaking of podcasts, yesterday, Paula Suchman of WNYC Studios told you about our new podcast, 10 Things. And so we're actually very interested in what scares you. So please share your fears with Paula and other WNYC Studios producers. Let me just take a minute to tell you about what scares me. So I get this tingly feeling throughout my body when my teenage daughter says, "You aren't going to like this, Mom." But most of all, I fear the insidious virus in our country today that is spreading disdain for expertise and facts. It's spreading anti-Semitism, racism, and yesterday we learned hate crimes. The virus that sometimes turns those who advocate for justice and equity against each other rather than against the enemies of justice. I fear that this virus sabotages women's leadership and confidence and is the backlash to the Me Too movement. Brave women have come forward to tell their stories of Me Too. Their impact is felt everywhere, including at WNYC. Already the backlash can make it seem that it was all for nothing, but it wasn't. We need to continue to boldly and unapologetically move forward. Work It is not about fear, though. Just the opposite. It's an antidote to this virus. It's about hope and the audacity to change. As Beyonce said, power is not given to you, you have to take it. Yes. When we decided to start Work It, that's what Work It is all about, right? Only 20% of the podcasts in the top 100 had a woman host or co-host. We've made some good progress. In 2018, on average, 39% of the top 100 podcasts on the Apple Podcast charts feature women's voices. Yes, we doubled it, okay, as hosts or co-hosts. This is up from 33% last year, but we still have a ways to go because we want to push to 50%, okay? Some of you out here are doing your fair share. I remember last year the CBC, Leslie Merklinger, and the CBC crowd raised their hands. They were at 50%. I don't know where you guys are now, but power to you. WNYC Studios is at 44%. So we, in this room, we can change that. We started this festival with the goal of achieving gender parity in podcasting. We wanted to create a community of smart, ambitious women who would encourage and support each other. And it's working. The number of women creating, producing, and hosting podcasts has grown significantly. But equity is more than numbers. It's the authentic voices of women, women of color and white women, women who grow up in cities and those who grow up in rural areas, women whose families struggle to provide for them emotionally, physically, spiritually, and women who are learning how to provide for their own kids. Mothers and daughters, sisters and friends, women who teach and women who learn, women who embrace facts and expertise. There is value in our stories, and our collective work is to tell these stories. So whether you're the one talking into the mic or if you're behind the scenes, giving shape to those stories, giving rhythm and context, composing music or designing sound, thank you. We need you also on the business side, showing partners that our podcasts are worthy of sponsorship, membership, and creative collaboration. And we need you to support each other and mentor the young women who will follow you and add to everything we're doing this week. Work It is designed to create community and networks so that you can open your doors for yourselves and each other. So one concrete thing you can do is exchange contact information with at least 5 women today, okay? Exchange contact information, because Work It is not just an annual festival, it goes throughout the year in supporting each other, giving each other tips, and listening to each other's podcasts. At New York Public Radio, we tell stories that meet our mission to make the mind more curious, the heart more open, and the soul more joyful. We want you to have all the tools you need to produce stories that meet this mission, and so that you can get up each and every day and do even better. That is what Jessica Williams and Phoebe Robinson do, the 2 dope queens. They do that every day. They say, how can we be better? And they have a surprise for us today. This morning, we are releasing a bonus episode of 2 Dope Queens, and sadly, it's the last episode. Yeah. We're so proud of Jessica and Phoebe. The show gave podcasting a much-needed infusion of raucous comedy from women. But you know the queens could never just end the show. They're going out with a bang. The final episode is a funny, revealing interview with a woman who most definitely deserves her own podcast, Michelle Obama. Yeah. So I know all of you want to hear this. It has just dropped, but please don't leave now. You'll be able to hear it anytime. Because it's time for you to meet Pat Harrison, really the co-founder of Work It. She was born not far from here, just over that borough line into Brooklyn, and Pat is the president and CEO of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and we thank you, Pat, for your incredibly generous support. So before telling you about Pat, I'd like to give a special shout out to several of the great women who work with Pat. They're extraordinary supporters of Work It. Elise Garfinkel, Pat's right-hand person, Erica Pulley-Hayes, Vice President of Radio, and Kathy Merritt, the Senior Vice President for Journalism and Radio. Thank you so much. Pat and I dreamed up the idea for Work It several years ago. There was a report that had been issued saying only 20% of the top 100 podcasts were hosted by women. So we said, what is needed to change that? Women supporting women. We're so excited to put together this forum, and each year it's grown bigger and even more exciting. Pat has a touch. It's the feistiness and boldness of Brooklyn, combined with the finesse and, shall I say, deep pockets of Washington. In her role at CPB, Pat leads with vision. She's strengthened public media by investing in innovation and technology and in diversifying content and talent. In fact, Pat established the very first Diversity and Innovation Fund for public media, putting the influence and resources of CPB into content that reflects the diversity of America. Pat and I are actually part of the public radio system, and in public radio, we've benefited from an industry where strong women have been decision makers and on-air voices, and that has grown over the last several years. We followed them, and you are following us. You're following us and making your own revolution in audio content. What drives Pat and me is the promise that more women can play bigger roles moving forward. what drives us, all of you, and the changes you're bringing. So here is the one and only Pat Harrison.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. It feels like afternoon to me because I just got in from DC. And wow, this has filled up nicely. Happy Festivus, everybody. And I want to congratulate Laura and her incredible team. They've done it again. And it's great for me to be back at Werk 2018 and in the room where it happens. Everyone loves this gathering, and as a result, as Laura already mentioned, I have people who wouldn't even think of letting me leave DC without them. Elise Garfinkel, Kathy Merritt, Erica Pulley-Hayes, and they care deeply about Werk It as well. So, as Laura said, Werk It has grown since that initial conversation that we had in terms of how we could get more visibility for women behind the microphone, in front of the microphone, and that's still our goal. I think that when we look back at podcasts such as Death, Sex and Money, New Tech City, The Longest, Shortest Time, Werk It was developed, and those podcasts through a CPB grant. And basically, you all had me on CPB at Death, Sex, and Money. 3 things I'm still trying to figure out. In fact, since 2014, CPB has provided more than $3 million for podcast projects. And our goal really is to help public media and stations create and develop podcasts that utilize new, diverse talent. But in my mind, it all started right here, WNYC, which of course is now one of the top podcast producers in the country and home to some of the most critically acclaimed and popular podcasts, including Radio Lab, Two Dope Queens, Nancy, Note to Self, and On the Media. But I have a bone to pick with all of you. Last year, Werk It was held in Los Angeles. It was very successful. And unfortunately, although CPB funded Werk It West, I couldn't attend. So what happened? I leave you all alone for just one festival and find out that New York is in a podcasting smackdown with Los Angeles, with both vying for the title of podcast capital of the world. No, not happening. Especially when it comes to women's voices. New York rules. I know I'm going to hear that from LA later. But I definitely have a bias because, as Laura said, I grew up in Brooklyn, the original home of podcasting. Now, when I was growing up, we didn't need technology. Well, we didn't have it. And actually, we really didn't care if anyone listened. We just shouted out our stories at eardrum-breaking decibel levels, and it was effective, especially if you were in earshot. And of course, in Brooklyn, everyone was in earshot. The stories were simple and to the point, and I do remember that, "Hey, I'm walking here," was a consistent theme, very popular. A close second was, "You're dead to me." Short, to the point. And of course, if you were on the subway, as we all were, "Move your hand or I'll chop it off" was appropriate. So truly, this was storytelling that mattered. Now, you really have to know that when I was a kid, Brooklyn was not the home of craft beer, artisanal breads, or 300-year-old olive oil. It was working class. It was Italians and Jews, Latinos, blacks, all with one thing in common, a love of Chinese food. And it was a high-energy place with not much personal space. So I grew up truly highly observant of people and aware of my surroundings, and with good cause, because, as David Letterman observed, New York leads great cities in the number of people around whom you should not make a sudden move. And I can tell you, in this highly charged verbal environment, I never met one weak woman. I grew up surrounded by women who had opinions about everything, and they expressed, these opinions 24/7. So I had no idea until I went to college in an alien country, Washington, D.C., that women were referred to as the weaker sex. And clearly, whoever came up with that cliche, Freud, never met any women from New York. I also learned something else in college, that what I thought was normal conversational tone was considered yelling. And my second revelation was that there is no good pizza outside of New York. But, okay, maybe now. But I also began to figure out a few things that I think may be relevant to each of you today as women and as storytellers. After graduating from American University, I realized I was on my future path. I just didn't know what it was or where it would lead. So I needed a compass, but not the kind of compass that you buy in a store or order from Amazon. I needed to develop a compass that would keep me on the path of my choice. So when I got a little lost, or a lot lost, as we all do from time to time, I could get back on that path again, a compass that would help me persevere no matter what. So I had to figure out what I stood for, and just as importantly, what I wouldn't stand for, what I would fight for, what I would fight against. I had to figure out what my ultimate mission was going to be and how I could add value to our world. And by the way, that question requires constant attention throughout your entire life. And I think it lies at the heart of podcasting, because you're all adding value by being true, authentic to your voice. And some of you are doing it through humor, while providing a deep dive on the issues that are shaping our society today. Others are helping guide us, providing support for tough times. And the point is, you are approaching podcasting, storytelling, with courage. I remember hearing Two Dope Queens for the very first time and thinking, I need to hear this every day. It's my GPS to sanity. The thing is that creating a podcast is only the first step in your lifelong commitment to knowing more about yourself and about the people you're trying to connect to, providing value to the listener so that long after that podcast is over, the questions continue and curiosity spikes, and in many cases, that listener takes action, maybe for their own lives, maybe on behalf of an issue. And I believe that women podcasters are successful because you talk about the undiscussable in ways that enable us to say, whoa, I thought I was the only one who had that problem, or yay, there's someone out there who's been through the same things. And that's why I was so pleased to see that Werk It 2018 includes sessions on leadership, inclusiveness, and avoiding burnout. In terms of leadership, when it comes to women, and I've studied this a very long time, I think one way to avoid burnout is to avoid listening to or reading books designed to tell you that as a woman you're falling short in so many ways. Recently, I did a search on leadership books aimed at women. From most of these titles, you would come away truly thinking we're agenda adrift in a leaky boat. For example, this is an actual title: Play Like a Man, Win Like a Woman, What men know about success that women need to learn. Now, that's an interesting approach. The premise is we can't even begin to succeed until we learn what men already know about success. Really? Hashtag me too? And this is just plain wrong. There are so many of these books out there. It's a cottage industry advising us how to dress, how to walk, how to talk, how to use makeup for contouring. Well, that one is actually helpful. So I would suggest, which I haven't mastered, by the way, you should take a look at books such as Find a Way by Diana Nyad, which is all about perseverance and not about makeup. And she did persevere. At age 64, she became the first person to swim from Cuba to Florida without the aid of a shark cage, 110 miles. And here's what's really amazing, and for you to think about a little bit. Sports psychology studies have shown that in extreme marathon activities, mental determination is a more important factor than the physical energy of youth. And I basically regard life itself as an extreme marathon activity, sometimes requiring a shark cage. So, as women, let's stop reading or listening to advice from the 17th century. Could you promise me that at least? Okay. Stop hanging around with people who are telling you it can't be done. Or better yet, create a podcast featuring all the bad advice you've ever received in your life. I will probably fund that one. There are so many sharks out there, as Diana Nyad found out, but we can swim unscathed through them if we are armed with our unique compass, one that we keep in working shape, a GPS to who we really are. It's all about leadership, and leadership is influence. And the real purpose of influence is to speak up for those who have none, to share your voice on their behalf. And this is the core of integrity-centered leadership, and it really matters, especially today, as you're all maneuvering through an environment of great social and media disruption. I knew from that first Work It gathering, after I came up for air after laughing so much, that women and podcasting were made for each other. And each of you worked it to the point where this gathering, as Laura said, now has global recognition. And that's because we need your voices, your opinions, your insights, your humor, pathos, compassion, relatability, courage in abundance. We need each one of you not to give up. So my goal is basically to keep moving the percentage of women-hosted podcasts up and up beyond 50%. And to do this, my compass, which is finally in good working order, tells me that CPB must continue to support Work It because what you do matters to our civil society more than ever. And my compass is never wrong. Thank you all.